Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday, it is 4 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 15 novels of suspense. Book 15, let me show you, is one wrong word that I can make a book face out of, kind of. And it comes out February 6th, the story of revenge and greed and scandal and suspense. And I hope you love it because I'm going on book tour and I hope to see you in all of the places, all of the cities where I am going around the country to let people know all the right words about one wrong word. But today we are not here about that. Today we are here to talk about Necessary Deeds by Mark Wish. And you will love this book. I was trying to figure out, I laughed. It was intense. It was provocative. It's immersive. It's funny. It's knowledgeable. It's sort of literary noir, I think, if that means anything to you. It is unlike anything I've ever read. And I say that in the highest of complimentary ways. It's unique and original and so much fun and so knowledgeable. And I know already I said knowledgeable, but there it is. It's an insider look at the publishing industry in a way that you've never seen it before. Publishing meets the FBI, and more I cannot say because I want Mark to talk about that. Laura McHugh, who we adore, calls it a high stakes noir, a taut tale of jealousy, murder, and redemption. And this wonderful book is out today. Mark Wish, welcome, welcome, welcome. And
Hello,
what are you doing
Hank.
to celebrate Pub Day?
Thanks for having me on, Hank. Good to see you.
Oh, my pleasure. What are you doing to celebrate Pub Day?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Just kind of hanging out here in Potsdam, New York. I had a radio interview with North Country Radio, which covers a lot of counties in the northern tier of New York State and into Vermont. And so went to that, and having as much fun as I can have in Potsdam, where there are snowbanks and it's very, very cold.
Yes, but it's book tour, it's Pub Day, and people are already commenting on this marvelous cover. Can you talk a little bit about the cover, the sort of walking in or walking out or through a door and crossroads and up the steps and all the perspective? Talk a little bit about that.
The cover, those steps are the steps to the main library in New York City, the New York Public Library, the main one on it's actually on, roughly 42nd and 5th Avenue. And there is a scene where our protagonist and narrator, Matt, walks up those steps. He actually walks up with someone else, so the cover's not quite representative that way. But at the same time, he's on his own mission. There's a certain amount of loneliness, and it's only Matt can do certain things. So anyway, that's where that's what the steps depict. The cover is the second cover that was proposed to me by Regal House, who publishes Necessary Deeds. The first one was, in my estimation, I just need a little more oomph, and I'm then happy I asked for that because I think they did a good job with this one.
Well, there's so much motion in this cover, isn't it? I mean, he's certainly on the hunt for something or going somewhere or looking for something, and the pathway is not straight. It's just
correct.
It's pretty great. It's pretty great. Congratulations and happy Pub Day. Before we go on, let me welcome you all to Crime Time here on A Mighty Blaze. If you are new to A Mighty Blaze, we are so happy to see you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Mary Garrett says the Between the Lions Library. Absolutely.
Excellent.
And what are their names?
Garrett.
Patience and what are the lions' names? Patience and Prudence, Patience, and somebody tell me in the comments.
You got me there. You got me there, Hank.
Of the lions are. I know their names. Patience and something, I think.
One should be Patience, though, for sure.
Yeah, and I think the other one might be Fortitude. But somebody in the chat will. Someone in the chat will know.
No
anyway, just to go on about A Mighty Blaze very, very quickly, it was started about 4 years ago, crazily at the beginning of the pandemic by the wonderful duo of Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt to keep us all finding out about new books and keep us all reading and keeping our community going and discovering wonderful new authors and keeping track of some favorite authors and maybe finding some new favorite authors. And that is what we have been doing, and we persevere. Patience and fortitude. Yes, we hear. Thank you.
There we go.
Everyone.
Yes.
So yes.
You gotta love the fortitude.
I know. I have a sweatshirt that I wear when I'm writing that says grit and optimism. And it's very rewarding to wear that.
Nice. Yeah.
Anyway, let me tell you all about Mark Wish. Mark Wish is the author of 4 novels, including the newest, Necessary Deeds. He's also the founding editor of Coolest American Stories, an award-winning annual anthology of short stories. That is the best title ever. His own short stories have appeared in more than 125 print venues, including the Best American Short Stories. He is the recipient of a Tobias Wolff Award, an Isherwood Fellowship, and a Pushcart Prize. He's long been known as the freelance editor who has revised the fiction of many once struggling writers, leading them to representation by agents, book deals, and publications in dozens of respected venues. But this is his very own new book, Necessary Deeds. As I said, it is out today. Mark, this is the world's hardest question, but tell us what your book is about.
My book is about, I'd say, primarily one of the obvious things that I think every book is about. I think every good story is a love story. So, and then when we want to have conflict, particularly in a tense murder mystery, probably there should be some hate or something like that leads to the violence and the murder. So in some ways, it's about love versus hate. Now, this is too easy of an answer for such a tough question, but I think it's also about ambition and how it can erupt into or spill over into envy, particularly in the arts, in, writing and publishing included. But I think this is also true of music, singing, probably professional sports, those kinds of industries that only a select few get to be the ones that get to play, and then there are only the select few get to be the superstars. And a lot of people are trying, and the result is, because basically everyone loses, of all the people trying, and does not grab the brass ring, there's a lot of envy. So I would have to say that there's an undercurrent of the theme of envy and what all the permutations it takes. Sometimes it can lead people to be close if they admit that they're envious of each other, but often that's not the case.
I mean, it's a story of love and hate, and envy and redemption, and justice, and publishing. And I love what you're saying about why people persist in a business where failure is much more likely than success, and how people feel when somebody else gets the thing that they didn't want, and how that can fester and be destructive. The plot of Necessary Deeds, lead us a little bit through what the plot of Necessary Deeds is.
Well, the book, the plot is set into motion by what happens in the opening chapter and the opening pages, and that is that our protagonist narrator, Matt Connell, is in Sing Sing in prison for a crime of passion. No need to get into that, but you can kind of imagine. And he's in for 7 years, and about 4.5 years in, the FBI approaches him and asks him, says, "We'll spring you early if you go undercover for us to investigate a former, or arguably still current, to the extent that somebody could still have a client when they're in prison, client of yours for multiple murders in Manhattan among writers." And Matt, I should have mentioned at the start, is a former literary agent. So he has writers as clients, and a bunch of writers are getting murdered in Manhattan rather gruesomely. And the FBI thinks, Matt's our guy. We need to have probable cause. We have somebody we think we can arrest, but we need more. He'll be tight because, with Matt. So they say, come on out of prison early and join us undercover.
And I'm so sorry. I know it's a murder mystery. But that's hilarious to me. That the FBI comes to, so there's a literary agent who's successful, and he is in prison for a crime of passion for 7+ years. The FBI comes to him and says, "Look, we'll get you out if you help us convict a former client of yours of a series of murders." And is it giving it away? Which is really, I don't think I've ever read anything like that. I burst out laughing at it. Forgive me, but that's a brilliant.
What part? That he was a literary agent, or that the FBI would do that? Yeah.
Well, the part I burst out laughing at is he eventually tell me about his methods of figuring out who a bad guy might be, what he has to do.
Well, he goes along with primarily what the FBI wants him to do, although he has his own theories as well. And a large portion of the method that both the FBI and Matt, pursue is to try to think of, by analyzing the writing of writers, who's the angriest one, who's got the motivation to kill. And so in an odd way, they're sort of workshopping, they're sort of acting, the FBI is acting as sort of a creative writing workshop professor and or an agent themselves, literary agent, and is sort of analyzing writing to see, well, who really sounds like deep down behind this, even though it's fiction and even though we're allowed to have characters and the characters should be interesting and we want to have novels that are crime novels. Still, they think there are some that show that the author personally is murderous.
I mean, and that's what is so clever and intriguing about this book. We're talking about Necessary Deeds by Mark Wish. The FBI wants this literary agent to accept submissions from authors and then read them to try to parse out who might have taken their own personal experiences, their own personal angry, ugly, murderous experiences, who might be terrible enough to be an actual murderer. So Matt spends his days looking for the bad manuscript instead of looking for the good manuscript like a regular literary agent does, looking for talent. He's looking for not talent. He's looking for the opposite of talent. How did you get that idea? That's really witty.
I think it was, I used to be a creative writing professor myself. I was an MFA student way back in 88, 89 at UMass Amherst. And then I moved over to the UC Davis creative writing program and then was in fiction workshops there. And then I taught some for UC Berkeley Extension and went on to teach creative writing at CUNY and a couple of other college campuses across the country. And when I taught particularly, but even when I was a student, I noticed in fiction workshops, both the fellow students of the authors who would have the piece up for discussion, and even sometimes the professors would make that judgment about the author, would, sort of pierce the veil of the fiction. And there would be, especially among the students who weren't as trained, they would attack the other students personally because they had a character who said this or thought this, terrible thing. Mm-hmm. And, the creative writing professor in me was like, hang on a second, that line of dialogue right there just introduced some tension into the story because, and plot possibilities. So why are we attacking this author for having written this line? On the other hand, if you just looked at the line and you thought this was a personal statement made by that particular person who wrote the story or the novel chapter, yes, it's a terrible thing. So I saw that happen a lot, and I kind of was bothered by it, frankly. And I've even noticed it happening to me in some of my published short stories. Couple writers would come up to me at, say, AWP or any of the other writer conferences, and sort of, one who went on, I won't say who, had a book who came out recently and has been a finalist for a Pulitzer and a National Book Award. First thing came up to me and said, I can't wait to argue with you. This not hello, I'm glad we were in this anthology together. I'm not, it was like fighting, let's fight. And it turns out they were offended and by something, a character that I wrote about said, and then he just said that's me. And, that's not true. I have a good imagination.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I was exactly going to say. It's your imagination. there is fiction. There are things that we just make up. And yes, of course they come from our own experience, but on the page is a fictional character. And I love in this novel that the FBI, along with a literary agent, are trying to explore the connection between fact and fiction, and that is absolutely great. I want to be careful, but I think it's right on very early in the book that there is a theory that the FBI has about why these people are being murdered. Again, this is a genius idea on your part. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, they think that because it so happens, and as you know, Hank, in big house, New York City house publishing, there are trends regarding who gets the contract in a given year or in a given set of years or a given period of time, and what one publishing house does, and that book sells a lot of copies, then another one will try to do something a lot like it. It's all about the bottom line. It's all about money. Same thing with the agents. One agent just sold this book. The other agent, well, I'm going to go find an author just like that with a similar book, and we're gonna get in on the cash flow here. And it just so happens at this time, young female authors, 3 of them in a row, got huge deals for books they hadn't even finished writing. And so just with the climate, as you know, Hank, in publishing and even in academia, the male female clash has been huge. I mean, back when I was in that MFA program at UMass Amherst, that's the first thing I learned was you're male, they're female, you guys are presumed not to like each other. Go, that's kind of, and it's just been like that ever since, as far as in my experience. But the FBI goes along with this and figures, well, if they're young and they're female, therefore the person who's killed all 3 of these new authors who've just gotten huge contracts must be old and male. And there's an old male client of Matt's who they think is the one. But they do it a lot by demographics. And, we are kind of trained to think that way, especially in publishing. And I don't know. I don't really think it was a genius thing. It was just, I noticed the way the industry works, and I just went ahead and did it that way.
I've never quite seen it presented this way on the page. An exploration of the inside of publishing and how much of it is there's the judgment and the jealousy and the almost sometimes whimsicalness of decision making and the envy of others' success and the constant comparison and the sort of, I mean, how many of you, when I look over here, I'm looking in the comments, how many of you have gone to a book reading as an author or as a reader and watched everybody judge the person behind the podium reading from whatever perspective they had? Talk a little bit about how you take your real life experiences. They must be not all imagined, in how people look at each other who are going after the same goal.
Well, I lived in Manhattan twice, once in the 90s, and then again from the time I signed my last book deal, which was with Putnam, and I thought I was going to be a big shot author. So my wife and I moved down there. She's a VP in interior book design for Random House, and she was tired of commuting from upstate where we live. So we thought, well, let's go move down there. And I had this new agent, and he was supposed to be a hot shot and blah blah blah. But as soon as I got down, and I also thought, well, then I'm also going to be pals. I'm going to network with all these great authors that are down in New York City. And so I went to many readings with my wife at first, and she quickly stopped going. I would go by myself. And yes, if you sort of sit toward the back, or you sit kind of in the middle and you look sideways and you watch the audience while they watch the reader, you pick up on a lot of vibes, particularly in Manhattan or Brooklyn, where all the aspiring authors were then, or I assume still are. And, that was around that time is when I started writing this book. So I think I sort of intuited that. Really, it's just it was a vibe. You just got the impression. A lot of kind of frowns that people try to just make disappear quickly, or
little eye rolls.
Eye rolls, yeah, that kind of thing. And even the way people treated one another, I found out for me at least, it was not like networking was quote unquote easy to do. There were a lot of walls people put up, and there was a lot of kind of ostracizing of this person or that, depending on which, reading you were at, the poets versus the fiction writers, the memoir writers versus the, the old versus the young, take again, whatever demographic you want, or whatever distinction we can make, which now, of course, in America, because, politically speaking, that's the media likes to do that. The politicians like to do that. And it seems like even back then, the publishing world or the writers were kind of doing that among themselves. And I imagine it's even worse now. I don't know. I don't live in Manhattan anymore, and I certainly don't go to those readings anymore. But I think that informed some of this.
Yes, and it's so clear. We're talking about Necessary Deeds by Mark Wish, which is somewhat satirical and somewhat realistic about the power structure and the echelons and the networking and the desire that people have for success, and the idea that some people have that someone else can help them get there, or that someone has something that they don't have. So, but underneath underneath this gorgeous insider publishing world story is and has to be a solid murder mystery. I mean, you couldn't just write a fun book that has an incidental serial killer. Your murder story is solid with a beginning, middle, and an end, and a completion. A couple murder stories. Can you talk a little bit about how you wove together this true noir plot with the murders, with your sort of take on the publishing world?
Yeah, I think it was, reading a decent amount of murder mysteries, a lot of watching films more than reading mysteries. Any crime. I'm a big lover of, Goodfellas, Donnie Brasco, by the way, was, kind of nonfiction, but the film about an undercover agent, and not necessarily murder mysteries. But so I've had an interest in crime, or, organized crime or crime films. I would say, as far as the structure of this particular book goes, I'll credit John Truby out on the West Coast, who offers some nice tapes and classes on noir structure, story beats, and that kind of thing. I listened to several tapes of his, and kind of been in touch with what he has said through other people who have studied under him for a long time. And I think the guy really knows. I know the guy knows what he's talking about. So, not to give away, to me, he makes it easy.
Yeah.
And I did re-listen to some Truby tapes before I did this. Everyone sort of knows what the overall structure of a mystery is anyway, just again, by watching films, even by watching TV. But to make sure I bolstered it, I listened to some Truby.
Yeah. I think my understanding of noir, and how I always think of it, is sort of a sad sack guy who's asked to do something that we all think, oh, please don't do that. And that some sort of femme fatale is involved. And then the ending is sort of touchingly, ambiguously, maybe not, I don't know. So, but
that's well put, though.
Maybe, I don't know. But, the guy who's put in a position of doing something that is a big step, that's a necessary deed in order for him to get something. Is that how you see this? The femme fatale is so much there, and the police and the cops, the law enforcement is so much there. And the people, everyone wants something in this novel. Everyone wants something. And sometimes we understand what it is, and sometimes it's a surprise. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Interesting that you said everyone wants something. I think anyone, often we're told when, we're taking a class or teaching a class, the notion is make sure your main character wants something, but really every character should want something. And let's go back to what we talked about at the beginning of the interview. In the writing world, or in the entertainment world, every player wants something. And so it was not that hard to have these writers / former agents / and then the FBI, they want their criminal. They want to solve the case. So you just sort of let people want what they normally would want. And I think I was a little more in touch with what writers would want. As far as the femme fatale, I more just thought of it as a love story. And yes, because it's murder mystery, Matt's love interest, you could call her that. I don't want to give away any more about the plot. But I think any story, short story, novel, even a narrative poem, I think if it's got to be a love story when you really get down to it. The author, if nothing else, has got to love the material, the subject matter, in order to have an authority over it enough to render it that interestingly. And it's not going to hurt any plot to have a love affair or a would-be love affair, woven throughout.
Well, because
I think of Matt's relationship with M. I did at the time of writing it, at least. I thought of it more as that.
Yeah. I mean, that's really fascinating because the people in a book like this are real people. So there have to be relationships. There has to be some sort of passion or lack of passion or desire of passion, something like that, or else they're not really real people. I mean, talk a little bit about, you have a concept in the book called Ferrari brain. And I couldn't figure out whether you made that up or whether that was a real psychological thing. Talk a little bit about Ferrari brain and what that has to do with the novel.
Sure. Let me just back up a second, just to make it clear. The people in this book are not real people, as in based on people in real life.
Well, I understand that.
They are not.
I understand.
You don't want any lawsuits here, Hank.
No, I didn't.
Legal House isn't that big of a publisher, nor do I have that kind of money.
You know that I meant that they're real characters.
Yes, and I took that compliment.
Characters.
I know I took that compliment, but we have an audience, and I just wanted to make that clear.
Okay.
I did go to law school, so I had to do these little disclaimers every once in a while. So I was taught. No, but the Ferrari brain aspect, it is a real thing in the sense that I heard about it, and actually that term, and had a conversation with someone about it, and it was while I was drafting the earlier drafts of Necessary Deeds. It didn't, Ferrari brain is mentioned right at the in the opening pages of this novel. I went back and put that in after having already probably drafted, the bulk of the rough draft. But I heard about Ferrari brain, and it's the notion that your brain kind of quickly jumps from one negative thought to the next, very quickly to the worst case scenario or scenarios. And since this term, the term is used on the Amazon page for Necessary Deeds. And since then, even, people went pre-order, like, hey, I read about that Ferrari brain. I think I have that. So I think it's more common out there in the world, or at least in the United States, than I might have thought when I put it in there. I think maybe the way the political environment in the United States has been, maybe in the world, is we are more full of fear. We are more taught. We are there's a lot of modeling out there for hatred, for violence and undoing of others. There's a lot of predisposition to hate, and so why wouldn't the average person who is somewhat rational have a touch of Ferrari brain? Quickly imagine, like, this could go bad fast.
This could go bad fast. And, you go to 0 to 60. Someone said, that I always go from 0 to World War III, and like that.
Right. Well, there you go right there.
Every author does it. Every reporter does it. Every mom does it. Every parent does it. We know what that feels like.
Right.
The brain is just.
Every insurance agent does it. Every lawyer does it. I mean, that's
exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So Mary says she's got more Prius in it for the long haul. That's really funny, Mary. That's really funny. One of the things that's
good for you, Mary. I want a Prius brain.
Wouldn't that be nice from time to time?
Yeah.
Or chauffeur?
I want like a Jetta brain.
I like Jettas. Anyway, moving right along here. Fast forwarding right along here. One of the things that I love about this, and that hit me as sort of time release, is that there are excerpts from other people's submissions to this literary agent, and there is poetry, and there's a segment of a novel in this, and I'm reading along.
Short story, actually.
Short story. Yeah. Thank you. And I'm reading along thinking, this is bad, this is good, and then I thought, wait, Mark Mark wrote those. Mark wrote those. You had me believing they were real, even though I know nothing's real. Talk a little bit about why you put those examples in and what it was like to put your very wonderful poetry in and then some other not so good things.
Well, thanks for saying that about my poetry. Well, I had to put the poetry in because the suspect, and we're giving away the first suspect that Matt's hired to go, wear wire around and get to admit more evidence that he is the killer of these authors, is a poet primarily, and unfortunately for him, 4,000 Matt thinks poems in those little literary magazines that many of us have submitted to, or at least early on in our careers, and all over the world, yet not one book. So for all of his publishing of poetry and writing of it, and even acclaim somewhat or popularity, no book sold. And this is thanks to our guy Matt, his literary agent, who just hasn't been able to sell one for him. So he was a poet, and the poems were being analyzed by the FBI in chapter 1 again to kind of workshop them to say, this is why we think it's this guy Ethan Hendy, the poet, who's the murderer. Because look at this line over here where he says this, right? And then just as the novel unfolded and the investigation went on, I just felt at certain times there were certain poems. At one point, Ethan Hendy, when Matt is doing investigating, wearing a wire, says, this is my best poem. If you ever do manage to sell a book of mine, make sure this one is in it. I don't know. I just thought, well, you got to throw it in. They're not that long. They're not hard to read.
But
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying that they add to the realism of it. It really feels like London saying, I'm very interested in this great book concept. And hi to everybody on Instagram today, too. We're so glad you're here.
Hello, London.
On Facebook. It adds to the realism of it and connects us to the literary agent as a character, because he does have real fictional people submitting real fictional things to him. I've never read a book with a literary agent as a main character. Is this unique?
It's possible that it's unique because a lot of literary agents don't want to sell them. I mean, I had to fire 2 agents to get this book published. It took a long time for me to get this book published by myself. I have no agent right now. And it might be because I wrote about agents, and I wrote about how, nobody's perfect in this novel. Certainly the writers aren't. The writers are up for murder, most of them. Or they're murdered. But this novel does kind of shed light on some of the ironies, to put it nicely, of people in publishing. And, at least the 2 agents I had for it, they first took it on, I think maybe because they thought, oh, he's got something here. And, I've been around. I know how to write. At least I know how to revise. And, but one reason or another, they didn't sell the book. And so what are you going to do? If you really believe in a book, you're going to either stick with your agent, they start telling you write something more mainstream or mellow or not what you're into. And you're going to either part ways with that agent, or your career is going to be done. You're going to sit around.
Or else, your other option is to write a book like this, which takes all that wonderful, terrible experience and lets us see through this prism of what it's really like to be a writer, and what it's really like to be an agent, and what it's really like to be in this really complicated world of human beings who are in publishing. And I just thought I think it's terrific. I think it's a tour de force and great.
Thank you, Hank.
You can see all my markings in it. Before I take questions, let me just read you all the first sentence of this. And you'll laugh, and then you'll just run and get this book. But one of you will not have to, because you'll win it. But let me read you the first sentence. Here in Sing Sing, the killers I've met are better storytellers than most of the novelists I've represented. I mean, that's just a great first line, and that sets the scene in so many ways for Necessary Deeds. Let's take a couple of questions. Mighty Blaze. I know this is Margaret is laughing.
Somebody laughed.
I agree. Totally funny. So let's take a couple of questions.
You have to have been in prison, Hank, to really get that joke, but whatever.
But no, my husband is a criminal defense attorney, and we have heard lots of stories. I
There
have
you
heard
go. There you go. So yeah, he knows, and you know what I'm talking about. Yes,
exactly. So,
they are good storytellers.
hey, Vicki Gregory, she says, love the cover, as we've discussed. Was
What's
Necessary
necessary
Deeds
deeds
always
always
the
the
title?
title? No, it was not. No, it was not. There were various titles. Um, at one point, one of the titles was The Talent Killer.
Mhm.
At one point, one of the titles was 28 Minutes. I think you know what I'm referring to, Hank. Readers will have to read to find that out.
Yes.
There were a lot of titles because, again, there were two agents, and sometimes either the agent would say, "Well, let's try a different title," and or then I was on my own trying to sell. You just sort of you send out to a couple of small, or medium presses, and it doesn't work. You think, well, I'm going to change something. I'm going to change my cover letter. I'll try a different title. And
But
when I
Necessary
thought of this one, though, I knew that was the
Yeah,
title.
I was going to say, because it's instant conflict. It's somebody doing
Mhm.
something that they don't maybe want to do, but they
Mhm.
have to. And
They
we
have
can't wait to find out what it is. We can't wait to find out.
And everyone has a necessary deed that they have done or still need to do.
Yes.
And I think we all, when we hear that, we know, like, that's not necessarily the best scenario.
And there you have a noir. So Sylvia says, did you have a particular demographic in mind while writing this story?
No, in fact, I had the opposite. I wanted to appeal to as many people as possible, people from all walks of life. And maybe even that, in that sense. I mean, I also edit and publish the anthology Coolest American Stories. It has the same ideology, and that's have these stories appeal to as many kinds of people all across the country or across the world. Doesn't matter economic, doesn't matter college educated or not. Don't have to be from an Ivy League. Don't have to be, let's not offend the agents that are selling the books, that get past that gatekeeper. Let's appeal to everyone. And I think there's something about the love story aspect in here, and then just the plain murder mystery story. Not to mention that, the book does point out the ironies of the elite of the country, the intellectual elite, and the sort of power brokers of the entertainment industry. And, generally people are taught to bow to this. And this book's like, let's have a little fun with this. And so
also,
I think anyone, it might be that I was trying to appeal to everyone except, the agents who I didn't get along with.
Well, there are lots of also sort of wannabes in the book that are fascinating as well, and what they try to do to succeed. It's just entertaining. And I mean, let me just say, this is just an entertaining book in every way for anyone who loves the publishing world or mystery, or even just good writing, good, clever writing. This is immersive and wonderful. Let's take one more question. What kind of research? Oh, hey, Deborah, this is a great question. What kind of research did you do to write this book in regards to the FBI and jail system?
That's a very good question. The novel that I had published before, the one that I had published by Putnam that brought me down to Manhattan, called Watch Me Go, which was, speaking of changing titles, titled Straight Away, and I should have kept that title, but well, that's another story. Was based on a short story of mine titled Straight Away that was in Best American Stories, and that story was chosen by Salman Rushdie to be in that volume. And to write that story and then to write Watch Me Go, which was sort of an extension of that story, well, first of all, agents themselves are the ones who saw that story, written from the point of view of a black male in the Bronx who kind of gets in trouble, even though he didn't do anything wrong, or really gets in trouble, potentially will. And because that story was in Best American, I presume, and because Rushdie picked it and said some nice things about it in the intro, agents were clamoring. And again, me and agents, I don't know, it's been a weird thing. I've had quite a few of them. It often doesn't work out. But they were clamoring. They're literally phoning me up in Putnam County, New York, and emailing me, finding my emails somehow, and saying, you have to turn this short story about this young black guy into a novel. So I did. And in order to do that, I went to Rikers. I drove down to the city, and I drove to Rikers, and I got a phone number of several, or an email address, I'm sorry, of somebody who, ran Rikers or was, involved in that, and asked them all about it. Asked them what is it like for somebody when they get there? How are they transported in? What are the rules? What is the room like when they're arrested?
Yeah.
Are they just everything, and what is their daily life like? And I got I had a lot of a nice back and forth. The guy was actually very informative. I'm sure there are things that he didn't tell me, he couldn't tell me, but he told me more than I thought he would. So in writing that novel, learned a lot about what it's like to be in prison from that. And so the stuff that ended up appearing he's in prison only at the beginning. Matt is, and it's now a white guy, older guy, literary agent, not a poor guy from the Bronx. And that was a lot because after watching me go, I was told, you can't write about black people. You're a white guy. That's not your business.
So the FBI.
So that was a bump in my career. But no, but I still knew all about prison. And, so Matt could go to, and I didn't put him in Rikers. I put him in Sing Sing for some reason. I don't know why. I guess because, well, the other guy was in Rikers. I can't have two books where the guys.
It's a different kind of prison, and then the FBI characters are wonderfully drawn, really, really interesting and unique and fun and multi-layered and totally suspect throughout. So, and that's not giving anything away.
And that, in case anyone wants to know, I went to a thriller fest in the city when I was living there, and there was a seminar run by the FBI, and there are FBI agents there. And I went to that, and I was fascinated by this. And they were, telling us as much as they could about the FBI and how they should be presented and blah, blah, blah. And that's why it's the FBI and it's not NYPD that comes up with this, because I just was like, yeah, I got to write. This is, my man's got to be in the bureau.
And it's so, it's so the highest level of law enforcement is the FBI. So you don't want to mess with them. And Matt sort of wants to find a family, it seems. Is that something that he is looking for in the novel? And that maybe the FBI is the family he never had.
Well, the family situation that he had, if we can call it that, before, that caused him to go to Sing Sing in the first place, is sort of gone in essence. So yes, but also, FBI, arguably also stands for fidelity, bravery, and integrity. And Matt wants to be better than he used to be, all Ferrari brain aside, all the fact that he's homicidal aside, or, has killed someone and might not quite be rehabbed because he hasn't done his whole 7 years. He wants to be, well, just like anyone. We all want to be something, I think, better than we are. Some days we succeed with that. A lot of days we don't. And I think you're right that he not only likes the group that the people that the FBI represents, because they sort of accept him. They like him. They need him, just like a family member might need you. But he likes what they aspire to.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I keep saying this, but this is a wonderful book, and you should all run and get it. Pub Day is today. Congratulations, Mark Wish, on this marvelous book. And one of you will not have to go buy it. One of you is going to get it from Mark himself. Do you have the very book that they're going to get, Mark?
Yes, I do. It's right here.
That is the very book. Mark has it himself in the Hampton Inn in Pottstown. Let's spin the wheel of fun.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
See who's going to win this novel.
You have to explain, why am I in Potsdam, Hank?
Well, you got to explain that.
That's too long.
And here we go. And the winner is Vicki Gregory. That's
Vicki.
Great. You asked such a wonderful question about the title. Vicki, you will email me, and I will email the executive producer, who will email Mark, who will email his publicist, who will email back the executive producer. And that is how publishing works. And you will get, or something like that. And you will get a copy of it.
Vicki should let me know if she wants me to sign it. And if so, should I make it out to her or whomever?
Great. You know what we can do? We can go right into the comments on Facebook when this is over, and Vicki can tell you what she wants you to do.
Okay.
Thank you to Mark for coming today. Congratulations on your book.
Thank you, Hank.
I'm so glad that
being on your show. I appreciate you inviting me.
Oh, my pleasure. It was a joy to read. Thank you. Let me quickly
And you're very welcome, Vicki. You're very welcome. I see your comment there.
Yeah, she's great. She's a stalwart of crime time. So I love that she won this today. It is just very perfect. Let me quickly tell you, I'm going on tour, as I said, for One Wrong Word. Go to my website, and find me. See if I'm going to be in your neighborhood, because I would adore to see you. As a result of, now I'm looking for something on my desk. As a result of that book tour, I'm not going to be here for the next month, but we will be back. Vicki says, please sign the book.
Gotcha, Vicki.
Gotcha, Vicki.
Should I make it out to you, Vicki? Should I make it out to you?
Yes, you should make it out to Vicki.
Okay.
The fabulous, wonderful Vicki Gregory, who I met on Crime Time with Hank Phillippi Ryan on A Mighty Place. If you could just put
you want me to write all that on
all
that?
Okay. Quickly. Well, I'll be back March.
Remember that, Hank.
Write it down. I'll be back March 5th for you all for another season of Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. And we will kick it off on March 5th with Where You End by Abbott Kaler. Where You End by Abbott Kaler. Look at that cover. I think that is quite creepy. And of course, the book is about twins, but you know that from the cover, mirror twins. And it is a really suspenseful, surprising novel. And Abbott Kaler is wonderful. So we will talk with her on March the 5th. I think that's the day, Tuesday, March the 5th, when I am back from book tour. I hope I see you on the road. Until then, I will see you on Instagram, hi Instagrammers, and Facebook, and I will see you in book world, in libraries and in bookstores, because remember, it is always safe inside a book. And we'll see you next time.